Silver has not broken out yet. While gold has, silver is still in this range. So I do expect that it will, there'll be some overhead resistance. But I think once silver is above 50, once we're at 51, 52, and 50 becomes the support, I think it's not going to take long for silver to double to 100. I think that move will happen quickly. It may happen in a matter of months.
Welcome to another video. Peter Schiff is back, and this time he's dropping a silver bombshell. He says if silver breaks through that $50 resistance and turns it into support, the price won't just rise, it could double from there. Imagine silver blasting into territory Wall Street said was impossible. And it's not just silver. Gold is charging higher too, breaking barriers, climbing step by step toward a full revaluation. According to Peter, this isn't speculation. It's the math of debt, inflation, and collapsing confidence in fiat money. Silver at $100, gold in the stratosphere? Schiff says the setup is right in front of us. And the only question is, will you be watching or holding? Stay tuned, because up next you'll hear exactly what Peter says in this powerful interview.
It's very realistic. I mean, especially if you have $10,000 gold, $200 silver, what is that, 50 to 1? I mean, so that's very realistic. And I think potentially silver could go higher than that. But right now it's above 41. It does have this psychological, and not just psychological, real resistance at 50, because we have a double top there that goes back to 1980. And then again, we hit it in 2011. So silver has not broken out yet. While gold has, silver is still in this range. So I do expect that it will, there'll be some overhead resistance. But I think once silver is above 50, once we're at 51, 52, and 50 becomes the support, I think it's not going to take long for silver to double to 100. I think that move will happen quickly. It may happen in a matter of months, right? Because once we take out that resistance, there's nothing there. And I think there's also a lot of shorts out there in silver that, are going to be in a lot of trouble trying to cover those shorts and buy silver that really doesn't exist. I actually like the fact that this bull market isn't on anybody's radar, because I just assume Wall Street buy into the market later at much higher prices. They don't need to get in now. I want my clients to get in now. And the less competition, the better. I just want to get as much, gold mining stocks and silver mining stocks as I can. And the last thing I want is, Merrill Lynch and Goldman Sachs telling all their clients to buy, right? Because that's going to make it more expensive for my clients. So the longer they ignore this bull market, the better, as far as I'm concerned. Like, I'm in no hurry. I waited plenty of time for this, and I'm in no hurry to speed it up right now. But I do look at that as a positive sign that nobody's invested. The public, has no idea. You have one group of people that are still fixated on Bitcoin, and they're buying Bitcoin instead of gold. Although Bukele, I just read that he just put $50 million into gold. So maybe he's figuring out that Bitcoin is the wrong way to go. But, it's interesting that Bitcoin is barely up today, and Bitcoin is more than 15% below its peak priced in gold from 2021. So 4 years, Bitcoin's been losing value relative to gold, despite all the marketing hype surrounding Bitcoin. All the ETFs that were established, the NFTs, the Super Bowl ads, the celebrity endorsements, Donald Trump and the strategic Bitcoin reserve and the Bitcoin czar and making Bitcoin the capital of the world, right? All that pump, and they can't even get Bitcoin to go up. So what does that tell you? But what is going up is the one thing that's not getting any hype, and that's gold. And now silver, going up as well, but not into record territory. So these gold stocks, I think, are still extremely cheap. They could double again from here, and I don't think they'd be expensive, especially considering that if the gold stocks double from here, gold's going to be a lot higher. So it's like they still wouldn't have caught up to where they should be. So we got a long way to go in the mining stocks. In fact, in April of this year, I kind of aggravated some of the guys at Schiff Gold because I put out this report that said the best way to buy gold and it was to buy the gold mining stocks. And I was telling my clients for the first time not to buy gold. And gold was around 3,200, 3,300. And I said, look, I'm a gold bull. I love gold, but these gold stocks are so cheap that it doesn't make any sense to buy gold above ground. Just buy it while it's still in the ground because it's so cheap. And while gold went sideways for all those months, the gold stocks were soaring. And they're not as cheap as they were, obviously, but they're still very cheap. And I still think people should be buying gold stocks and gold now, and physical silver and these silver miner stocks. So, Schiff Gold is my gold company. What you want to don't do, there's so many, unfortunately, shysters in the gold industry. And they rip off their customers by pushing them into these numismatics or collectible coins, fake numismatics, proof sets, odd weighted, coins you've never heard of. And they do that because the markups are 30, 40, 50% or more. And so you need the price of gold to go up 50% just to break even. So why buy gold at 3,600 if you need 5,000 just to get out even? So at Schiff Gold, we're marking up gold like 1%. So if you bought gold yesterday, you could sell it back today and make a profit, right? So you don't want to get ripped off. So going to Schiff Gold, you're going to get the best prices. You're going to get just bullion. We're not going to try to push you into something that makes us money. We're going to sell you what you need to make yourself money. My goal is to make a little money on volume, not on ripping people off. But that's also interesting. Like Schiff Gold's phones are not ringing off the hook. I mean, it's slow, and that's the same throughout the industry. And what the Schiff Gold guys have been telling me, our reps, is that customers have been reluctant to buy because they're worried about buying the high. And I've been telling our customers all year, you got to buy the high because that's all that you're going to have the opportunity to do. The problem is the longer you wait, the higher the high is going to be. So you just might as well buy now. I mean, because you're not going to get a big enough pullback. You'll get some pullbacks, but why wait? It's not going to be enough to make a big difference. And the risk is that by the time you get a pullback, it's pulling back from a price that's much higher than if you just bought it right now. I don't see any panic to buy. Gold's not moving up $100, $200 a day. I mean, that's going to happen. I mean, it moves up $10, $20. I mean, today, $50 is a big move because we got data. But, I haven't seen anything crazy. The gold stocks go up 2%, 3%, maybe 4% in a day. Then they pull back. They're not up 10% in a day. They will be eventually, but we're not there yet. So, people should get on board on the mining, on the metal at Schiff Gold. And gold stocks, my gold fund, I'm very partial to my gold fund that's managed by Adrian Day. But I think that the hidden value in my gold fund is our portfolio of very small junior miners that would be almost impossible to buy today, given the liquidity. But these stocks haven't moved the way the big ones have because the money that has been flowing in has been buying the Newmonts and the Barracks and the Agnico Eagles and the Franco-Nevadas and Kinross and I Am Gold. I mean, they're not buying the little ones. That's going to happen. That's next. And I think they're really going to move. So you can get into that exposure. We've got all the big ones in my gold fund. I think it's going to be obvious to the markets that the rate cut is politically motivated. Also that Donald Trump is trying to basically hijack the Fed and fill it with his cronies who will make monetary policy to make the president look good, not to deliver on the Fed's mandate of controlling inflation. I think this is going to be very negative for the dollar. I think there's a real risk that the Supreme Court upholds Donald Trump's authority to fire Fed governors. I think the Supreme Court may say that a truly independent Fed is not constitutional and there must be oversight. They must be beholden to somebody who's elected, and that would be the president and maybe Congress because Congress approves the appointments. But if the president gets to nominate them, the Supreme Court should say, well, the president can fire them. And I think if that happens, then we tear down even the pretense that the United States has an independent Federal Reserve. And our creditors will look at the complete unwillingness of the government to do anything about the exploding deficits. The big, beautiful bill took all the Biden deficits and made them worse. So we're headed for a fiscal train wreck. And I think that's going to be, a flag, checkered flag, to sell the dollar. And I think, central banks have been walking away from the dollar now. They're going to start to run. And the dollar is going to fall more. In fact, the dollar is on a new low right now, I think, since Trump's been president. Looking at the dollar index, I think we're breaking below 97. Yeah, we're 97.45. I think this is the low for the year for the dollar index. But, it's a long way down for the dollar, which means it's a long way up for gold. And, people just need to understand, the Trump administration can talk about how great things are, and he could send Howard Lutnick on television to talk about this great booming economy. That's all part of the show. It's all a bunch of lies that they're spinning. The economy is a disaster. It's weaker now than it was under Biden, not necessarily because of Trump, because it would have been weaker even if Harris had won. But there's nothing that he's doing that's helping to fix the problems. In fact, what he's doing is compounding the problems. So remember, it's not a true privatization. He just wants to privatize the profits, but socialize all the losses. Because what Trump wants to do is something that even Lyndon Johnson and Richard Nixon didn't do. He wants to make the assumed implicit guarantee an explicit guarantee. He wants to say, these are private companies, but anybody who buys their bonds, if anything goes wrong, the U.S. taxpayer is going to step up and bail you out. And so that's going to create a much worse moral hazard than the one that drove them into bankruptcy the first time. And I think what Trump wants to do, too, is lower the lending standards even more so that Fannie and Freddie can guarantee even riskier debt. Because people can't afford to buy these overpriced homes. And so the only way they'll be able to afford it is if they could buy with nothing down, right? So maybe that'll be the thing, or maybe they'll get more teaser rates. But the Fed, that's what Trump wants to do. He wants to goose the housing market and enrich his friends who bought into Fannie and Freddie last year for $1.50. I mean, the stock was $1.50 and now it's $11, $12. But the companies are ultimately going to go to zero when they collapse again. But in the meantime, there could be a lot of profit that's made by the people who bought in and get out. I don't know who's going to want to buy it at these higher prices, unless, of course, they say, hey, it's going to be a monopoly. In fact, they want to take Fannie and Freddie, I think, and make one company. So instead of having a duopoly, they have a monopoly. And now they have government guaranteed debt instead of just, people assuming the government would step up. Because if they're going to do this private placement, if they're going to sell stock, the government's going to have to put it in a prospectus and have to put in writing that the obligations are government guaranteed. So this is a terrible thing. What we need is to abolish Fannie and Freddie. If Trump really was a conservative or libertarian, if he believed in capitalism and the Constitution, he would abolish Fannie and Freddie. They were created by Franklin Roosevelt. And in fact, when Roosevelt created, Fannie Mae was created by Franklin Roosevelt. But even Roosevelt wasn't dumb enough to do what Trump wants to do. He created it as a government agency, and it was only allowed to buy FHA guaranteed mortgages. It wasn't allowed to go, just buy conventional mortgages. So what Trump wants to do is create a monster worse than any other far left-wing administration would have done. There's no way Biden would have done this. So it's going to be very inflationary, because what it's going to do is it's going to funnel more credit into an overpriced housing market, and it's going to divert credit away from the real economy, from the productive economy, driving our trade deficits even higher despite the tariffs.
If Peter's warning hit you like a lightning bolt, don't just scroll away. Smash that like button so more people wake up to what's really coming. Hit subscribe to ride alongside Peter's boldest predictions. And don't forget the bell icon, because when silver breaks $50 and rockets higher, you'll want to say you heard it here first.